Ohtani is signed, but the rest of the market is pretty quiet still. There really isn't anything new going on in the world of the Mariners. So, what do you guys want to talk about? I'll answer some of your questions coming up here on Mailbag Monday. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Monday, December 11th, 2023. This is Tynan Gonzales and Colby Pattenhead for the Locked On Mariners podcast, brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That's LOCKEDON to get yourself started. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you're part of the crew and rock with us every single day, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. You can now get a free 7-day trial to check out the show. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description of this episode. It is Mailbag Monday, the show where we answer your Mariners questions, and we're going to start here with Patrick, who wants to know, with the Braves now trading away both Marco Gonzales and Evan White rather painlessly, why couldn't the M's have done the same thing? Was it really necessary to trade away Kelenic? Why couldn't they have made similar trades the Braves did? Two very different situations between the Braves and the Mariners, and how both of those teams handled trading away the contracts of both Marco Gonzales and Evan White. The Mariners rid themselves of pretty much the entirety of both of those contracts, save for the $4.5 million they sent to Atlanta in those deals. Meanwhile, the Braves actually ended up taking on salary from the Angels when they traded Evan White to Anaheim and took on the contracts of Max Stassi and David Fletcher. That's about $6 million more in 2024, and about $3 to $3.5 million more from now through 2026 when you factor in White's guaranteed 2025 salary and his buyout in 2026, and then Fletcher's guaranteed salary in 2025 and his buyout in 2026. The Braves did turn around and flip Max Stassi to the White Sox, but because they didn't take anyone back who's making money, I would assume that they are paying most of, if not that entire contract on Stassi. And when they traded Marco to the Pirates, there was a report that they did include cash in that deal. Some conflicting reports about how much that is. I've heard anywhere from the entirety of the contract to about half. Let's split the difference and just say that they're paying most of it, right? So very two different situations here where the Mariners, the value of the deal and why they had to attach Kelenic to it was because they needed to shed payroll. They needed to free payroll. For the Braves just didn't see Marco as a fit for their 26-man roster and didn't want Evan White on their 40-man roster. And they ended up flipping those guys and paying for them to essentially go away and take on players that they would rather have, like David Fletcher, for example. Now, maybe they still flip Fletcher like they did with Stassi, but they're doing a lot of roster turning over there. But very, very different situations. For the Mariners, it was just they weren't. It wasn't about trading the players away. It was about trading the money away. Whereas for the Braves, it was about trading the players away rather than the money.
Right. Seattle trading Marco like the Braves did, or trading Evan White like the Braves did, that wouldn't have helped them reach their goal. Their goal was to shed the contracts. You have to eat all of or most of Marco's contract to trade him to the Pirates. You're not saving money. You're saving what, $2 million? That helps, but you're also not getting a player out of it. You trade Evan White to the Angels, you're not getting just David Fletcher. The reason that the Angels took that deal is because that they were also shedding Stassi's contract. So
Yeah,
you're adding $7 million just to get rid of a $7 million contract. It doesn't make sense. The math doesn't math. So two teams with two different, goals, essentially making two completely different style trades. Yeah, that's how it works. Unfortunately, the front office is in a position where they have to value the financial flexibility over getting full value for the player that they traded. So, essentially what the Braves did is they bought Jared Kelenic for $13 million, and then they bought David Fletcher for, I don't know, like $9 million or something like that. That's basically what they did. So yeah, I don't, the idea that the Braves school the Mariners on how to do this. No, because if the Mariners just wanted Marco off the 26 man, they would have made a deal just like this, but they wanted to get rid of the contract. That was the big thing for them. So yeah, just two different teams with two different goals. And as a result, you have two different processes. That's just how it works. So yeah, I mean, it's at the end of the day, the difference is the Braves wanted the players, the Mariners needed the money. So it's unfortunate that that's the way it is, but that's the way it was, and that's why the trades look really different.
Right. The Braves did not own the Mariners, which is kind of the misconception on Twitter. The Mariners own the Mariners because the Mariners are cheap. So that's just what it boils down to.
Thanks, John.
Yeah. Next question here on Mailbag Monday comes from Christian. In an effort to avoid full nihilism, since it's only checks notes December and we've got a lot of off season left. Thank you, Christian, first of all, for your perspective. I appreciate it. It's a breath of fresh air. Christian says 2 parts. Who takes a bigger step forward next season between Walter and Furious George, and who takes a bigger step between Wu and Miller?
First
you
of
guys
all, it's
really
a terrible nickname for George Kirby.
What's a better nickname for George?
How about just George Kirby?
I like Jorge. I like calling him Jorge.
I mean, like, whatever.
Which isn't really a nickname. That's just George, but I like Jorge. Jorge's solid.
Whatever. Apparently he's at the Renaissance Fair today, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know what you call him. How about we just call him by his name?
You're fun at all.
I don't like bad nicknames. Furious George is a bad one. Let's just call it what it is.
Well, he just doesn't really come off as furious to me.
No. Like, is that maybe in reference to when like they put him back out there in Tampa? I don't know.
It's not like angry Doug Baldwin, you know?
No. So yeah, I don't like bad nick. Like, if you don't have a good nickname for somebody, I'm just not going to call them that.
Sure.
Get out of here. That's bad.
Right,
that's
let's
bad,
answer,
and you know it.
Let's answer the question.
Gilbert, because he has more room to grow than Kirby. If Kirby just puts up the season he did every year for the rest of his career, he's a Hall of Famer. I feel like expecting him to take yet another step.
I don't know.
Possible.
I think there are ways that he can take a step forward to induce more swing and miss, and also kind of counteract the overly aggressive game plans from teams. And I feel like Gilbert's step forward season, like his big step forward season, was 2023, and now it's more just about building on that, because like he had to refine his repertoire, and I feel like he did that in 2023. Now it's just kind of building on top of that.
I hear you, and yet I don't care, because I completely disagree.
All right. Why do you disagree?
because that's my job mostly.
Right.
I have a brand to protect, Ty.
That's
unlike
right.
the Mariners, who are just naming people Furious George. Like, that's a good idea. Yeah. So who takes the bigger step? I'm going with Logan, because I feel like he has a larger step to take than George. So, yeah, obviously there are things George can fix. The inducing more swing and miss is a big one. Not being like, basically every time that George has been like crushed, it's been the same game plan. So how do you counteract that? That's something that you can take a step forward with. For Gilbert, it's more about just the package overall. Like, can you be more consistent with the splitter? Can you find a breaking ball that is somewhat consistent? And if you compare even like a half a grade up on the slider, would make a world of difference for Logan, because he throws plenty of strikes. So I think it's just about Gilbert just kind of refining that breaking ball a little bit, and I think he can take a huge step. Like, he doesn't have to come up with a new pitch like he did the winter before. The fastball splitter combo is going to work for him, so long as he can get the splitter near the strike zone. But if you can add a breaking ball, something that moves away from righties and into lefties, then I think he could really, jump up and be a 10K per 9 guy, and 2.5 base on ball per 9, and be a 5-win pitcher. I think he can do that with just a small tweak. I'm not sure what George is going to do, to counteract his issues, because he hasn't necessarily learned a new pitch. Like, I mean, he threw the knuckleball, but like Gilbert,
And obviously
basically
that's going to carry over into 2024
Sure.
and is now a weapon for him.
But I mean, like Gilbert basically decided, oh, yeah, I'm gonna throw a splitter last winter, and he brought it into the big leagues immediately, and it was a good pitch right away. Like
Yep.
that's
Which
just
is
not something
also
George
going to be the case for Bryce Miller, of course.
sure. But yeah, I guess I would say I'd say Gilbert, just because he's got a bigger step to take to reach his ceiling. I think, whereas I feel like George is pretty close to his ceiling, but there obviously there is still another step.
Right. The Miller and Woo, I think it's Miller. He's just further along. Woo,
Yeah.
when obviously still has a ton of room to grow, but he's just a little bit further along than Woo is, and Woo still they still might have to watch him with his innings count, his pitch count over the course of the year. So I mean, because again, this guy is not that far removed from Tommy John surgery, and he hasn't thrown a lot of professional innings in general, not just at the major league level, but just in professional baseball as a whole. So I think they're going to have to keep an eye on him, and there's there's no guarantee that he is going to be part of this rotation by season's end. He might end up going into the bullpen, or they might have to shut him down again, or he might end up in AAA. Who knows? Still really, really high on Brian Woo, don't get me wrong, and I think he's going to be a very good pitcher in the future. But yeah, as of 2024, I think there's still a lot of question marks with Woo, and I think with Miller, there's just far fewer question marks. And we'll see how he approaches like Gilbert refining his repertoire as a whole, not because he's not going to be able to just survive on that fastball. It'll work for him some starts, but over the course of a full season, especially now that the league has more of a book on him, he's going to need something to keep hitters off balance. So it's going to be a big off season for Miller, but I think there's definitely an easier path to see there for him to take a big step forward than Woo right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think for 2024, it's Miller, just because he should be ready to go. He should be able to give you 170 innings next year.
Yep.
And Woo, we just don't know. If you ask me, like, who has more upside in their entire career for the rest of their career, assuming they both stay relatively healthy, I might pick Brian Woo, because that fastball is, I think you can make an argument it's better than Miller's for different reasons. So I think it's going to be kind of, I think it just kind of is becoming a race of whoever can develop that primary secondary quicker.
Yeah.
Like that's going to be the more valuable player. So at least we've seen a decent slider from Miller in the past. So I guess I'd give him the edge. But if there's if Woo comes back into spring training, he's got a 55 slider, like with his 4-seam and 2-seam, that's mid rotation right there for as many innings as he can give you. So both these guys are really just one pitch away from jumping into being a number 3 starter for a lot of teams.
Agreed. More questions coming up here on Mailbag Monday. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and a whole lot more. And the Mariners might not be playing right now, but the Kraken and Seahawks are. So whether the action is on turf or on the ice, whether it's Jared McCann or Geno Smith, you can bet on it all with FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's LOCKDON, and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the National Football League. But are the Seahawks and Kraken really playing right now? Really? Are they?
They are taking the field. That is all I can say about them.
You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen here on Mailbag Monday. And as a reminder, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And also a reminder that we are now at 3 shows a week here on Locked On Mariners for the next couple months, pretty much until pitchers and catchers report in mid-February. We'll be posting episodes Monday, Wednesday, and Friday here on Locked On. We will be moving our Patreon shows to Tuesday and Thursday during that time as well. So Colby and I are just recording once a day. But don't fret if there is a move that happens on a Tuesday, Thursday, or on the weekend. We will do an emergency show. And lastly, question of the day. What is the best NBC mockumentary? Is it The Office or is it Parks and Recreation? Let us know in the comments below. Let us know in the chat.
Totality, Parks and Rec. Best, like just highest quality at their best, The Office.
Yeah. Peak Office,
Mhm.
but consistency.
Better career.
Consistency goes to Parks and Rec. Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
All right. Daisy and the Dingo wants to know, seeing how dismal T-Mobile Park ranks in the baseball savant park factors, could you ever see the team changing any of the field dimensions to try to bring it back closer to a neutral field? Would there be any incentive for them to do so? I mean, they did that in the past with the left field wall. They brought that in, and there was a time where that did help things, but recently, I mean, this past year, it was the most pitcher-friendly ballpark in all of baseball. So they could do that. Will they do that? I don't think so. What is the point of doing that? Yeah, because it makes it more attractive for hitters, but then now it's less attractive for pitchers and less favorable for pitchers. So it just you're just kind of adjusting the slider. You're just adjusting the slider, and it's one thing is going to get worse while one thing gets better. So is it really is that actually worth it to you?
Yeah. One thing you can't really control either is the weather.
Yeah.
It's cold, it's windy, it's wet. In March, April, and May. That's just the way it is. So I don't see much of a benefit to doing that. And even if you do it, it's probably going to be a couple years before free agent hitters look at that and go like, okay, so this isn't
it needs to be a proven concept. Yeah.
And so if it doesn't work in year 1 and 2, are you going to bring it in even more?
Right. And the only thing that the only thing that you really need to adjust there is the left field wall again, right? Because it's just
right. I mean, you bring it in 5-10 feet, but I think at that point it's like 311 right down the line, and at that point it's you're getting pretty close to what is reasonable. So I would say no. I just don't think there's a reason to. Just build a better team for your ballpark. T-Mobile Park's beautiful, and like the Kansas City Royals have done in the past, if you build a team that fits your ballpark better, then you have home field advantage, which is literally the point. So I don't think bringing in the walls, I don't think that's going to do much. And like you said, it's mostly just the left field wall that's a problem. Left field is where fly balls typically die. So I mean, I guess you could bring that in 4 or 5 feet, but maybe is that going to make in April and May?
Maybe you can bring in left center a bit, but
I guess. But just build a better team.
Yeah,
take advantage of the ballpark you do have.
You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen here on Mailbag Monday. We got one here from Max. Cleveland reported the Mariners have checked in on Josh Naylor. If there is a trade for him, can he and Ty France coexist on the same roster? They rotate DH or Naylor plays outfield. Also, side question, will the Patreon show release earlier now that you don't have to record twice? So to answer the second part of the question, yes, because we'll be recording around 3 Eastern, noon Pacific time. That's when we always record. So because we're not going to be doing double recordings and therefore doing Locked On first before the Patreon show, will be recording earlier, and therefore the show will come out earlier unless I have somewhere to go or something to do before I have a chance to edit the show. So
unless he has a better opportunity. than getting you guys the show that you pay for.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, it'll come out a couple hours earlier.
Can France and Naylor coexist on the same roster as of now? Yes, because that DH spot is wide open.
Yep.
Wide open. So yes,
that's the only way they can though, because you're not putting Naylor in the outfield. Don't even think about it.
No.
So,
nope.
Yeah. So yes, right now they can. If you go and you add like Jorge Soler, then no, they cannot. No. At least not in a way that's conducive to the Mariners, best chances to win. Let's put it that way, to be nice.
Yep. Like the Naylor idea a lot. I completely understand why the Mariners have checked in on him. That comes as no surprise whatsoever. It's going to be expensive.
I have no idea how you get him.
Yeah.
Naylor's only got 2 years of club control left too. So
yeah.
Do you want to trade Miller or Wu for 2 years of Naylor?
Yeah.
I don't think so. So yeah, tight fit. But maybe you get Clase or Bieber out of it or something too. But yeah, they can coexist. I wouldn't say that's a likely move that the Mariners are going to pull off. And yes, the Patreon shows will come out a couple hours earlier, just on Tuesday and Thursday now instead of Monday and Wednesday.
Yep. Next question here. Final question from Mark. What would a Mitch Garver contract look like? Would you do it?
Yeah, Garver's an interesting guy. Not really a full timer. He only played 89 games last year. Obviously, Jonah Heim having a breakout year limited his opportunities to be on the plate, and then it took him a while to kind of latch on as the full-time DH for Texas. But there's no doubt that he can hit. Certainly, he can. So you do get some value from him catching, but he's not a good catcher. So you kind of have to be careful about overvaluing maybe 20 starts that you get from him there. And then at that point, he's first base DH only, who's never, been this good over at the course of a full season. He's 31 years old. Like there are some red flags, around Garver, but he's also a really good hitter. So, I mean, or at least he has been recently. So
yeah,
you have to take a shot on somebody. I think Garver, where Seattle would probably feel comfortable on Garver is something like 2-32, like 15-16 AAV, something like that. I think what Garver's probably looking for is 4-70, something in that range. So it feels like there's maybe a middle ground here where it's 3-54, something like that, 3-50, somewhere in that range. And that's pretty close to like the max I would pay for him, because I do have questions. And again, the catching 20 games thing, like, is that more valuable to me than Lourdes Gurriel, who is going to play good left field for 130 games, but he's not going to hit as much as Garver? Which one would I rather have? That's close. It's up for discussion. So I think I'd probably rather have Gurriel, but I think Garver might be a little bit cheaper in terms of money and years. So I think probably my guess is what he ends up getting is like 3-56, somewhere in that range. Somewhere between 3-50 to 55, somewhere in that range.
Right.
But I think he's probably looking for like 4-70.
Yeah. If the Mariners signed Garver, I'd be fine with that. I'd be cool with that. It's a good ad. But I'll put it like this. If it's between like Garver at 3-50 and Soler at like 3-60, I'm going Soler. So
I'd agree.
That's a long-winded way of saying that Garver's not my first choice. I like Garver.
No.
Good hitter, but would like other players more than him.
Yeah. Would you rather, fun hypothetical here, would you rather trade whatever you think the freight is for Brent Rooker, or give Garver 3 years, 50, let's just 3 years, 50 million, just make it easy? What'd you rather do? Assume that Oakland will take a bulk deal.
Rooker.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Despite Garver being a better hitter, at least right now. So
yeah,
in theory, maybe
I'd rather give Rooker, save my money, right, and hopefully
save the 15 million,
put that money into something else that I need.
Right. Yeah. I think some people are overvaluing Garver's ability to catch a little bit, and they're kind of ignoring the fact that I don't think he has a season where he's gotten 500 plate appearances in his entire
Right,
career.
yeah.
So
I mean,
there's
shoot,
a little
even
bit of
this year, like great
it's
year
like
for him,
three.
but I think he played
Yeah.
like 78 games this year or something like
I
that.
think it was 89, and he got like 380 plate appearances. Like
Yeah.
it's there's some red flags. It's not a no brainer,
Yeah. Like
but there's just
I'm
not.
just like it's a hard no for me at $20 million a year.
Yeah.
At 18, I'm kind of hesitant. And even at 16, I'm not super on board with that.
Well, I mean,
Ideally, like if you could get him at 2 and 28 with like a third year option or something like that, I think he's going to end up getting more than that. But for me personally, if you could get him at that deal, then that's where I feel most comfortable with him.
yeah,
But you're likely going to have to give him more than that. And at that point,
right,
I don't know if that's going to be worth it.
right. Garver, by the way, career high in plate appearances. He's never had more than 400.
Yeah.
In a season. So,
And obviously that's going to come up in negotiations. So
Mhm.
is anyone going to give him, close to $20 million a year? Probably not
right.
when we factor
Plus,
all of that in.
the last 4 years, Garver's done that back and forth thing where he's really good and then bad, really good, mediocre, really
And it
good, and
doesn't
it's like
and it doesn't seem like teams right now, even with the how limited the hitting market is, that teams are necessarily giving in right now on hitters. Now we haven't seen a lot of deals, but like the Candelario deal, that's fine.
Mhm.
15 million a year for Jameer Candelario coming off the year that he's coming off of. Totally fine.
That's not an overpay
Yeah,
with the
Jason
lack of
Hayward at
bats in the
$9
market.
million
Yeah.
for 1 year.
Mhm. That's
Yeah.
about what you would expect in a normal year. So
Right.
far, at least, it doesn't seem like the poor hitting market is jacking up the prices of the offensive players, which is
Yeah.
a good sign for Seattle. One other thing I would note here, like in the whole Soler versus Garver, versus like just that general idea, the player who's more willing to be creative with their contract structure probably is going to be the one that the Mariners prioritize. Like if Soler's willing to take $6 million in year one because he's going to make 27 million in the final year or whatever, and you kind of try and backload the contract to add more talent to this year, and Garver's like, no, I want 15 across the board, they're probably going to just pivot to Soler. So that's something to
Right.
keep in mind with every free agent right now. The structure of the contract is going to be incredibly important.
That's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Dane Gonzales. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty Dane Gonzales and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you on Wednesday. Peace.